everybody. Welcome to TL's Roadhouse. Good to have y'all with us again. Buddy Michael Roark in the house.
Oh,
yes, sir.
happy to be here.
Good to see you, man. It's been a long time, bro.
See you, man. It's been a minute.
So we met. The first time we met was one of my acting debut in the industry. We met on L.A. Dirt, and we've remained friends over the last several years. And it was a great experience for me. I haven't been able to follow it up with very much, but you've had an amazing career so far.
Thank you, sir.
So I was looking at your body of work. So let's run down your list of stuff, man. So, golly, there's been a bunch.
Yeah, it kind of comes in waves. It's
NCIS, 911, Beauty and the Beast. I saw some of those. Stalker.
Yeah, it's been film heavy last few years.
Yeah.
Film and TV is a very different beast, although it's starting to kind of mesh and become the same thing now. But yeah, the last couple of years, especially since COVID, everything's changed since COVID.
What would you say the biggest role that you've had so far, the biggest impact thing for you?
Ooh. I like to think of that in terms of genres, right? Like, I mean, probably my biggest film so far has probably been It's War, just because that has a theatrical release. Most things do not get a theatrical release anymore. And who knows, where that part of the industry is headed. But I would say it's probably been It's War. But yeah, I mean, there's been some indie films that have made an impact for a certain genre audience.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, there's some other films coming out soon. I've had 3 releases this year, and I've got a couple more releasing next year that I'm pretty excited about, and the teams are pretty excited about. So yeah.
Dolphin Tale, was that your very first? Role?
That was my film debut.
Yeah.
That was fun, man, because I was living on the beach, actually. I could have walked to set when I filmed that thing. And I remember kind of, that was my beach town. And then for that film, I'm swimming in like December, cold ass water.
Yeah.
I can't get a full lung of air. And I got to swim like the length of the bay. That was a lot of good memories on that one. I made a lot of good friends because there was a lot of people on that cast. We were young bucks. We were on our way up. And a lot of people from that cast have done very well.
Yeah.
And that film did well. That film made #1, actually.
It did. I mean, that had a great impact, especially with a lot of the younger audience and stuff, too.
It saved Clearwater Marine Aquarium, too. Yeah. That's one thing people don't say. I mean, the aquarium was pretty much done at that point, and that movie came along and saved it. And I don't know if anyone who's listening has seen that aquarium now. It's like Disneyland now. Like, it's beautiful, and they do some really great work over there.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
So you've, I think you've moved. You and I've talked a few times. I think you've moved a lot more into doing production and running a production company and stuff too, and kind of getting.
Yeah, a little bit of that. I mean, I dip my toes. I mean, producing is a natural evolution, and I remember hearing something a while back. Like, once you find your hyphen in the business, things really take off. It helps to not just be an actor. Are you an actor producer? Are you an actor writer? What else you doing? Right.
So a producer in the music business is not the same as what a producer in the music in the movie industry is. A producer in the music business actually is the guy that will put the session together. He'll get the musicians. He is instrumental in finding songs with the artist, but overall his main objective is to cut the record. I mean, he goes in and he manages the project and produces the stuff, make sure the arrangements are where he wants them.
Right.
And so that's the big role. What is the role of a movie producer or television producer?
So, I mean, a producer term is so varied and so wide. Like, that's very niche. A producer can be so many different things. Your executive producer usually is someone who's in charge of the money, you're in charge of the IP, the script. And usually their job can be done once the movie's getting ready to film. And then on the day when the film starts, you have producers, you have associate producers, and it's everything, all the jobs you can think of to run the actual film.
So they're instrumental in hiring the director. I mean, do the producers typically own the script?
So it depends. So if you're TV, usually it's being studio run. So that's kind of like a conveyor belt. It's already set up. So producers are just they're TV people. A lot of the things, it's kind of plug and play. With films, the first thing you're usually going to do is you got to get the script, you got to type the script, and the first thing you usually do is attach a director. Because it's about the money with the film. You got to get the money to make the film. Movies aren't cheap. So if you have the money lined up, at this point you're an executive producer, right? So you got the script, you got the money, you get your directors lined up, you want to get your key cast lined up. You need those first few pieces so then you can build the rest of the house.
Yeah.
So that's director, key cast, key producers. Now once you got that, you have your producers who are kind of like, trying to think of the best way to put it. It's everything from logistics to running the production to your line producers to hiring your department heads, and
Will they be responsible for like pulling permits,
all that.
scouting location sites, making sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's
Yeah,
are
but this
dotted?
is where it gets interesting because producers used to mean something different. These days, they throw producer credits around.
Oh yeah, especially executive producers and all that stuff. That kind of bumps. There's many ways that you
They
can,
get people to work for free, like, we'll give you producer credit. So they don't. I don't want to say they don't mean what they used to be, but it's a bit of a watered down term now, and to the point where people don't know what producer means anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's why I ask. I mean, because it does seem to be a pretty broad spectrum when it comes to the movie world and all that
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
it's thrilling though, man. Being a producer is fun, especially if you can be in the creative aspect of it. You got your physical producers, and that's a lot. That's a hard job. Now, not everyone wants to do that job. The people that do that, I mean, they're godsends for any film. We need to have those people who are do it everything people. So, in my short time, I've been producing. I mean, I've been producing for a while now, but I took a little beat from it as I got busier with acting.
Yeah.
But I pretty much touched every producer job, and some of them are thankless jobs, man. Some of them are jobs you don't want to do.
So when we met, you were still living out in L.A. Obviously, the landscape has changed drastically over the last couple of years, especially since COVID. But L.A.'s kind of, if it hadn't fallen off in the ocean, it's pretty close to it. Did you make the decision to kind of leave for your own mental health? I mean, did you kind of pull out, or do you plan to go back? Are you just kind of ebb and flowing back and forth? What's your situation in California?
I could say this: there was a pretty big exodus from LA, and I think part of that was a lot of people were looking for a reason. And LA, one of those, it's not just an LA thing. It's a big city thing. It's a lot of people left their families, they left their lives behind to go do this thing. And then what happened, not just with the challenge of living in a major city like LA during COVID, was you have an opportunity to restart over. Because the biggest thing that changed from COVID, amongst a host of things, was we don't have auditions in the room anymore. And I don't know when they're coming back.
So everything's pretty much video done and sent in.
100% a remote.
Really?
I mean, I'm doing the same things, over here on the East Coast as I would be in LA. And I'll be heading back to LA soon. Like, I've never really left LA. I'm still there, and I'll still be heading back. I'm pretty much bi-coastal. But the reality is I don't miss anything. Like, I could be anywhere. I was just in Italy for a month. I could have been doing auditions from over there. I blocked myself out because I didn't want to, but I could be doing auditions over there the same way I would be doing them in LA. And there's pluses and minuses to that.
You think that as a casting director, that might limit your feel for an actor or something if you don't really have them in front of you in the room?
Absolutely. But there's also this. If I'm a casting director thinking from a business perspective, how much overhead did you just save? You don't have to have an expensive-ass LA office. You don't have to deal with the logistics of all these actors coming in your room. And let's be real, like, there were a lot of germaphobes before COVID. You got all these people coming in, coughing and sneezing all over your room. Like, some of these casting directors look, we love having that in person. I'm sure a lot of casting directors love having that in person. Yeah. But I bet you there's a lot of casting directors that don't hate the current situation. But I can say from an actor's perspective, I miss the room. I do, man, because I'm a performer. I want to. It's funny because I was talking about this recently. Outside of just booking jobs, I think it's more challenging to book jobs if you don't have that personal touch, and it's a performance. Like you can do a self tape, but there's a way to do a self tape. There's an art to it, but it's never going to be the same as performing in front of people. It just won't. Like, the energy's not there. But what I realized for myself was like, man, that was like my church. It was like, that was cathartic for me. 2 to 4 times a week, I was walking in a room, throwing down and performing in front of people.
Really? That's
and now I'm doing it. I might as well. Dude, I could be wearing freaking pajamas. I'm not, but I could. You
can also do it 10 times instead of having to be on point for that moment when you're actually in character and you're trying to deliver that experience to the person that's trying to decide who they want to cast in that role.
And not to mention, dude, there's people that can just paste a script and just cold read a script and just read lines, like, what do you do on the day? I mean, and that's because I just shot a movie in March. I did a movie in January and did a movie in March. The movie in January wasn't, I was more locked in for that, but for some reason I stepped on set in March. And so, like I said, usually I have that time in rooms, right? That performance time. If I'm not doing a play, if I'm, not doing something else, I'm at least auditioning in room. So I stepped on set in March, This was like this Lifetime film, pretty cool role, and we're pretty happy with the final product, called Suitcase Killer on Lifetime. But man, that first day, I was like, "What's going on? I'm nervous. Like, what is this?" And there's always some nerves, right? There's always some nervous energy. If there's no nervous energy, something's wrong. That means you're just dead inside or you don't care anymore. Like, there's some nervous energy always, but I'm like, no, this is different. Like, this is like my first 5 years in the business nervous. I'm like, what's going on? Like, and so I was able to work through it. By the second day, I'm fine. I'm back. But that's a product of being rusty, man. Like, if you're not swinging the bat, if you're not in the cage swinging the bat, you're not, it feels different. So the art suffers a little bit in that respect.
I love. I'm going to ask a lot of questions because I like to learn more about the nuts and bolts behind the scenes. I mean, a lot of people just kind of see what your roles are on camera and all that kind of stuff. I want to know, as LA has kind of withdrawn, you've had a mass exodus.
Right.
The movie industry, after the Weinstein thing's taken a big hit publicly. There's been a whole lot of stuff that's happened.
Right.
As production companies have moved to like Atlanta and Alabama and Florida, and you got things being shot in Tennessee like Monarch and like Nashville was. How important has that been for smaller companies that are doing more independent films and more independent TV projects? Is that filling a void? Do you think that's healthy for the industry with things being spread around more? How do you feel about all that?
I like it. I think it's good. I think it's look, I would preface that with saying this. LA is still the source of everything.
Yeah.
It's never going to leave LA. It's always going to be Hollywood. Maybe not always. I don't know. Things can change. But right now, it's still happening in LA and it's still happening in New York, right? And that's where all the business starts.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good thing that the energy is being spread all over the states, and not just the states, man. It's all over the world. It's global. It's
Is
Canada.
it cost effective to shoot things more outside of LA? I know Hollywood's
Absolutely.
been doing stuff in Canada for years.
Yeah, because as soon as you go to Canada, it's 70 cents on the dollar. You have a 30% discount as soon as you go to Canada.
And a lot of states doing that. I think Alabama has tax breaks for production companies.
So they have tax incentives. Canada doesn't even need to offer a tax incentive just because of the difference between the Canadian and the USD. But yeah, tax incentives. The reason Atlanta's on fire, outside of they're just very welcoming to film, and they do a very good job, by the way. Atlanta's a great place to film. Is their incentive is fire, man. Like, they got a great tax incentive.
And they've got a huge production network too, with all the bells and whistles and lights and the
yeah.
crews and the trucks and all the stuff that you need. It's structured and set up.
Yeah, it's Hollywood East. It's Hollywood East, and for a good reason. And it's a good place to film. I think it's good too because it's hard. Everyone uses the term bubble, right, with places like LA, New York, and it's true. When you have all that energy trapped in the same square mileage, right? Like, people tend to kind of, the same ideas are being bounced back and forth. It's good to go to other places. I'm from the Midwest, man. I don't really bump into that many people from the Midwest when I'm out in California. It happens, but it doesn't really happen, right? I think it's good to get other people to see other perspectives, not just in front of the camera, but the directors, the crew. I mean, most people don't realize, like, you step on a set, like, it's not an actor's set. It's the crew's set.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, because I came up in the Southeast. It's important for other people who want to do this and want to get into this to see how films need to be made, because there's some places that still may be non-union where they just kind of, it's not that their heart's not in the right place. They've never seen it done right before, right? They haven't seen how things are supposed to be done. So you have these films, these TV shows coming to places that have never filmed. I think it's great because people are getting opportunities to learn and to become a part of the business, and where you don't have to, because it was hard, man. It was hard to move across the country. I was living in Florida at the time, but it was hard to move across the country, leave my family, leave everything I knew, and go chase this thing on literally the furthest point in the States.
And you got things like, actually being away from your family. And you came from Illinois. You grew up from outside of Chicago. Yeah. Lawyer by trade. I know you went to college and you got your law degree. Did you ever pass the bar?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm licensed in Florida, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So I started, I know it's a bit strange when people hear that. People never know how to respond to that. So I did theater in college along with finance. And then I'm like, Hollywood or law school, what's it going to be? I'm like, well, I ain't going to law school later in life, so let's just do it now. Let's knock it out. Yeah. And it also gave me an opportunity to stay near family a little bit longer because we had just kind of migrated down to Florida. So I kind of want to look after them and make sure everyone kind of landed on their feet. And so, I knocked out law school, and I don't know how it would have gone down for me if the financial crash didn't happen. The financial crash happened. It made my decision easier because there was no freaking jobs anyway.
Really?
So there was no jobs. I got back into acting. I caught one gig. One gig became 2 gigs, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, shit. I'm having more fun and making more money than I would in a law job anyway. So let's see where this thing goes. And that was always my 1A. I just couldn't find a way in. But I was fortunate. There was a great workshop I found. Of all places, Tampa, Florida. I found a great workshop called Performer Studio Workshop. It's no longer around, with Kyleigh Lachlan. But I found a great workshop down there and a great host of actors who are friends to this day that I just came alive, man. I'm like, this is it. This is my chance.
Do you still, you mentioned theater stuff a while ago, so you still kind of going back and forth between film and live stage and stuff? Which do you like the best?
Oh,
I know they're completely different disciplines,
yeah.
and it's a whole different mindset.
It's always an interesting thing to add because acting is acting.
Yeah.
The only thing that changes between stage and film, well, a lot changes, is it's the intensity of the performance. I got to be able to hit the back wall when I'm on stage. It's more physical on stage.
And projecting.
Yeah, you got to project.
And
right?
it's all out here.
As you know,
more,
you perform on a stage. Yeah. Film is all stillness, man. It's all in your eyes. It's lasers, right? It's happening here. And you have to learn how to control, have to have like kind of a controlled intensity with film. I love film. I love stage. I come from the stage, but man, I love film acting. The thing that I love about stage is I can become a different person for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I don't leave that person. Like I am in it. I am in that. I jump in that ocean. I don't get out for 90 minutes. Film, you're lucky if you get that for 60 seconds at a time. Even that's long.
So if you lock into a character in a stage performance and say you got a 60-day, 90-day run, what's typical for
it? All depends on the state. It depends on the theater. Depends what the run is, what they got coming up. It also depends if it's doing well, because usually what will happen if you have a play that's doing well, the producers will be like, well, let's keep it going. The seats are full. There's no reason to take this thing off. Once they start seeing empty seats, then they start kind of planning the exit.
So if you got a role like that and it's doing well and you got a really character that you can sink your teeth into, how much does that performance evolve and change from night to night? Do you pretty much lock in and you just try to hone it? Do you expand a little bit? I know the dialogue doesn't shift at all. I mean, you're pretty much locked into the script with a live stage performance.
No,
but what changes as you evolve through the character? Is it a more comfortable thing as you get 2 or 3 shows under your belt? How does that progression evolve for you?
That's a great question. And I don't think it's ever the same way twice, but it's a living, breathing animal. It's always evolving. It's always changing. Of course, the trick is to make sure you're not repeating a performance.
Absolutely.
You don't want to do what you did last night, because then it's not happening organically. It's not happening in the moment. And now you're not having anything spontaneous happening, right? But like, yeah, man, it's a living, breathing animal. Like there are times when I've done a play where like literally, as the play closing that performance, I'm like, God damn it, that's what I should have done. That's what I should have done the whole damn run of the show. And it just hits me in that moment. And I know you and I have talked about this back in the day. There's a postpartum to letting a role go as well. And I found that deeper with stage than I had with film. It's there with film as well. And as I've been doing this for a while, it's gotten easier. But I look back on my life and some of the more challenging times I had, man, I was dealing with like some postpartum from letting some roles go.
And I remember that conversation. I think one of the guys that I think Anthony Hopkins was a guy that we touched on, and Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah.
I've heard stories of guys getting into character in some of those roles that literally have to take months to get back out of it when they lock in pretty hard like that. So that's a very real thing for you.
Yeah, it's very real. And it also what happens is, it all depends. Everyone's different, but I found shades of myself. I think this was more early in my career. These days, I can kind of turn on, turn off a little bit easier.
Yeah.
It just comes with doing this for 15 years. But there were times where I would wear my character out, and not know it. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, well, who am I right now? Right? Like, and that's really, am I Michael or am I the guy I've been playing? And the answer is probably a little bit of both.
How long do you hold on to those things? Do you think they remain a part of you from now on, a little piece of those? Do they stay with you?
I think the really, really deep ones never quite leave.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. It's like a piece of art, man. If you paint a beautiful painting, you really pour your heart and soul into it. If you make a great song, you pour your heart and soul into it. Does it ever really leave you? There's a part of it that kind of say you might get sick of playing it. You might get sick of seeing it. I get sick. I mean, I don't really watch things I've done over and over again. I'll watch it maybe the first time, not always, but I want to see it. I want to see how it turns out. But yeah, I mean, there's always a part of you. Now, there's always some things that, sometimes you do a project and for whatever reason, it just did not meet expectations, and some things are forgettable.
How long does it take you to really get back out of it? I mean, that's something that you dive into, just trying to hone that thing and trying to work on all the facial expressions and all the things that you could. Do you stand in front of the mirror? Do you work on all the little nuances of a character? I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff about how guys really just look at every aspect. I mean, where it comes down to a walk or a little certain a tick, or do you look for little things that make that character just kind of normal? Maybe it's a little head movement, all those things add depth to a character.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, you want to do it from the inside out. You definitely want to be physical in your roles. I don't do anything in front of a mirror. Because if I'm doing anything in front of a mirror, it's not real. That's me trying to show something. You never want to show something. You want to be something. So I don't do anything in front of a mirror. In fact, I would advise younger actors to get the hell away from the mirror.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought that. I think that you would really be looking at ways to kind of hone that persona. I'll give you this example. So Beth Dutton, the character, and I can't remember the actress's name in Yellowstone. She is a British actress, and watching her role as Beth Dutton, she has really dove into that character to a point that it is so believable, and you just really buy into everything that she's doing. I made the point to go watch some of the interviews that she's had, and when she is her own person, her mouth, she's got that British where she's just her face, her whole persona is completely different. She doesn't even look like the same person.
That's cool when you see that.
It's amazing to me because you can tell that she has really dialed that character in. She doesn't even hold her jaw the same.
Right.
It's drastic, man.
It's always funny when you see that with the foreign actors as well. Once they put on the American dialect, because I haven't had to do any foreign dialects. I've done several domestic dialects, and even that, man, it's cool because you're not hearing the sound of your own voice. So it's very that can be a trap when you hear your own voice. It's an easy way out to slip out of character. So when you start from a walk, or you start from what you're wearing, how you carry your center, are your shoulders drooped, do you have a twitch, what's looping in your head, what are you thinking about, right? Because acting comes from the brain and the heart and between your legs, right? It's all those things.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to approach it, and that's why there's nothing worse than sitting and listening to actors talk about acting, but I love it. I'm so fascinated by the craft. I mean, I've nerded out on it since I can remember. To this day, I'm fascinated by it. I'm always fascinated by everyone's process. Everyone gets there a different way, and I've always said, and it's not just me. A lot of people would say this. You have your people who become a character, and you have people who are technicians, right? I'm not saying one's better or worse, but I think an audience can tell the difference.
Oh, absolutely.
That's Kyleigh Riley, I think. Kyleigh Riley?
Yeah, that's her name, Kyleigh Riley. Yep. Yeah, and you can tell there is a moment where an actor is developing a character, and I've seen it in some sitcoms and things where it might take a few episodes, but you can tell when they finally get that persona dialed in, it just gets natural. Something changes. All of a sudden, it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't look uncomfortable. All of a sudden, it just becomes who they are, and it's a switch that flips, and it's very noticeable.
Well, that's the nature of the business now. Is sometimes a show doesn't get an opportunity to get there. It gets canceled, at least they cancel these things too quick, right? Or before a show gets a chance to really find its feet. That happens. It happens a lot. We see it all the time. But no, absolutely. There's a moment, I think, where it clicks and you drop in, and that's a great feeling. And it's same as surfer catching a wave, or any kind of thrill you can imagine. It's a great feeling. I live for that.
So Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu, all these things that are developing original programming and all that stuff, how do you feel that's hurt the quality? Because I've seen as budgets get lower, and production times get shortened. Do you think that it's affected the quality of some of the stuff that's out on some of these streaming platforms?
I think it's impossible that it could not. I mean, it's hard to answer that because there's some great work being done.
Absolutely.
There's some great shows being done, some great work being done.
But there's only so many really great scripts to go around. That never has changed. So there's a lot of stuff that's getting made to
doors have also opened for more voices than have ever been opened. So there's that, which is obviously a huge benefit. I think one of the challenges we see now is there's so much great work being done that there's too much. Like half these things,
it's overload, man.
You can't see anything. Like there could be great people on a great show doing great work, and you never heard of it, and then it just falls to the wayside and just is forgotten about. You know, I think that's one thing that's hurts it. And look, streaming has brought a lot of benefits, but you know, anytime a huge benefit comes along, there's going to be things that you lose. And you know, as soon as we went to streaming, I mean, the logistics of it was as soon as hard goods went away, it got harder to finance anything.
Oh yeah,
you used to finance a movie just on selling DVDs.
There's no revenue. The revenue stream is gone.
Yeah, we would look Target, Walmart. We can sell X amount of DVDs here. We can finance this movie here. Let's go make a movie, right? But you know, even what we shoot on is different. You know, films used to have that old grainy kind of feel to them when they were shooting.
Oh yeah.
You know that even had a different feel to it. Yeah, I do think there, in a sense, you could say some of the magic has gone. But at the same time, you know, there's so many great things that have come along from it. There's a lot of great work being done. But yeah, it's hard. I'm conflicted with that one because, you know, I don't even know how to approach it. Because I don't even watch that much, to be honest with you. I'm more into documentaries and reading books. So I can tell you as an audience member, it's probably great, but I don't find myself in the audience that much. I love watching great performances. I like watching directors that I want to work with. But I'm not someone who will sit down and binge watch a TV show unless they really hook me.
Gotcha.
I got to be hooked, man, and that ain't easy.
Yeah.
And I think part of it for me is I might know too much. You know, like I'll see it. I'm like, I saw where they put the camera on that.
The fantasy of it all goes away when you look at a camera shot and you know exactly what they cropped out, and you know that just outside the frame is all this other crap out here. I mean, it really changes your
We're not far from Disneyland, right? I got some buddies who worked there back in the day, and they're like, you know, no, it's ruined for me. I've seen behind the curtain.
Yeah.
I've seen like under Disney. I've seen this. I've seen that. They're like, it ain't so magical after you see all that.
That's it. All right, let's change topics. So you're a big adventurer. We were texting back and forth last week, and I sent you. I love watching stuff on YouTube, and I'm always digging around trying to find interesting things. And I stumbled on this guy that he travels solo. I mean, he had been to Colombia, going to South America. Dude, you and I talked several years ago. You kind of took a sabbatical. Did you take a motorcycle trip through Korea? Where was it?
I did Vietnam. I did a few of them. I did Vietnam. I did Bali. I kind of lived in Bali for a minute. I've done Thailand. I've done a lot of Southeast Asia.
I want to hear about some of your adventures, man, because that's pretty fascinating to me to be able to go out over there and do that. And I think being able to mentally get yourself in a position where you're not blinded by what the media says. I believe people are people everywhere you go, and I believe if you go out with good intentions, I believe you can find people that are gracious, that are welcoming to you no matter where you go in this world.
Yeah.
So give me some good travel experiences, because you've pushed the envelope and gone to some places that are not your normal tourist destinations and done some things that are a little off the grid, man. And I want to hear some of the journey that you took and why you did that.
Well, just to speak to what you just said, what came in my mind is, you know, how people are different, right? So I did a backpacking trip through Central America back in 2015. We were on hiatus from a show I was filming. So I started in Guatemala, and I worked my way down to Costa Rica, about 3.5, 4 weeks. I wasn't motorbiking, I was just kind of cruising. But I could talk your ear off about hours on that. But what I would say is this, I remember being there and seeing people who had nothing. Like, they don't know how they're going to eat today, but they got a light behind their eyes, and they're smiling as happy as can be. Then I walk through Wall Street, see some dude who's got everything, and he's a miserable prick behind his eyes. And that kind of tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it?
Yeah.
One person's happy, one person's not.
Well, money's you can't buy happiness. No, that's what it's all about.
So, I mean, what it's done for me is done a lot of things. First of all, I just got wanderlust, and I always have, man. I remember being a kid, Just wanted to hop in my mom's van wherever she was going. I didn't give a shit. I just wanted to go. I don't care. I want to go. I've always had that. But what it started with was like, it started as birthday trips. But what I realized was not only do I love doing it, it expands who I am, and it's almost a necessity at this point. I need to step out of my life and myself to constantly get perspective. Do I need to? Look, I don't have to. I'd be fine. I could probably stay in my rote routine, but if I want to keep expanding and keep evolving, especially as a human being and as an artist, I got to make sure that I'm getting a steady intake of things that are not my usual environment. So if I go to another place, I'm getting smells I never smell, tasting foods I've never tasted. I'm just wearing clothes out. Because when I go, I don't show up with a suitcase. I show up with a backpack.
Yeah.
I probably show up with a couple T-shirts, a couple pairs of underwear, just essentials, and I buy clothes at markets, and I buy what I need, and by the end of the trip, I just take home a couple pieces for me, and
What's your objective when you go? Do you obviously you really want to try to assimilate? You don't want to bring that American ideology with you that we all seem to have over here. So I think assimilating into a culture and being gracious and finding camaraderie and companionship at different points is probably very essential.
I think, yeah, it's just like a lot of it's just not being a dick.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, people show up. I've seen it, dude. I've been.
Oh yeah.
Of all the places I've been, I've seen when American tourists come cruising through. Not just American tourists. It could be any kind of tourist, but like
entitlement.
Right. You can smell it, and they come through, and I get it, man. We were all young once. We were all kind of idiots at some point, right? But there is a sense of shit, man. Like you have something to learn here. These people have something they can teach you. If you just put that aside for a second, and like, what are you gonna learn if you already know everything? You already got it all figured out, man. So why are you here? Just stay where you are. You already know everything. I go because I want to learn something new. I want to be around people who it's a give and a take. Like I want to engage. I want to be part of the world. I want to see how they live. And a big thing for me is I like to call them just like my spiritual downloads, man. Like I get my downloads. It recenters me for my life. What's working, what's not working, in a way that I can't do it when I'm in my usual life. Like, yeah, I can meditate, I can do wellness, I can do yoga. That shit's great, and I need that. But nothing hits me in the way that it does when I am motorbiking in another country. And usually it's about 7 to 8 days for me to take on the rhythm of another place. First 5-6 days, it's vacation time. On day 7, I start taking on the culture, I start taking on the people, and I start kind of living in a different skin. In a way. And yeah, man, it kind of gives me a perspective I wouldn't otherwise get. I'm able to step outside myself. Like, these are the things that are working in my life. These are the things I would like to change. These are the things that need to effing change.
It's got to be a very humbling experience at times when you get in situations where people have nothing.
Yeah.
And you are there existing with them at the same time and place with people that it's got to be very insightful, enlightening, where you realize that we are so blessed to have so much stuff, and so why are so many people in this country unhappy?
I sometimes I'm jealous of them, dude. I remember, speaking of Vietnam, I was motorbiking in Vietnam, and that was a solo trip I took, and I was going through some things at the time, so that trip was very, very impactful trip for me. And motorbiking down these jungle roads. First of all, it's lonely, which is what you asked for. It's like you're hiking it's like you're hiking Mount Everest on your own, kind of type of thing, right? Yeah. It's a lot of miles to cover. Your ass is sore. You're hungry. It's dangerous. Motorbiking in Vietnam is not the safest thing. But I remember, all that aside, I've traveled enough where I got pretty good travel wits about me, so I trust myself. But I'd be traveling down a jungle road and see these, kids and families just living off to the side in a hut or some kind of village. Man, they're living under the stars. They're running around laughing, happy. They're with their parents. They're with their family. They're all family, right? They got their community family. They're all there. They have everything they need. And I remember just thinking, like, that is a cool way to live, man.
Wow.
Yeah, and like there's nothing about them that wants something more. Do they want anything more? No, because they all got the same thing. Nothing. All they got is the food on that day and the clothes on their back, and that's all they need. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
You kept
And
a journal through any of that stuff?
Oh, I journal. Yeah, I journal all the time. Yeah. I lived when I was 20 years old. I went and studied abroad in Sweden because it was the only one I could afford. And man, I was broke as hell. Like I ate a Snickers and a banana every day.
Yeah.
I started bartending this old like 15th century bomb shelter converted to a bar thing, mostly just because they would feed me, and food was expensive in Sweden. But yeah, I kind of took up journaling then, and I've kept it up my whole life. It's important for me.
What's the scariest situation that you've gotten into in some of those travels like that?
I mean, Vietnam, I had a wipeout, which was pretty bad, but that wasn't the scariest. I think
as far as like Congo or some stuff going on like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, usually what it is, you find yourself in a dark alley you should not be in.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I had a couple instances where I'm like, shit, man, I don't know. I might as well just say it. So, yeah, back in Amsterdam, I took in the culture.
It's all good, man.
So I took in the culture, so I did not have my travel wits about me.
Yeah.
And a whole day of taking in the culture. And I just turned down the wrong alley. And on that wrong alley, it literally was like those old cartoons, man, where some dude with a trench coat just opens up his trench coat. He's got needles, he's got guns, he's got this, he's got that. And then there's other dude standing behind him. Then all before I know it, there's a dude standing behind me. You know what I mean? And like, I had that happen. And on that same trip, this is kind of a long story, so I'll just give you the abridged version. I was with two dudes I was traveling with in Amsterdam, and we're young shitheads, man. Like, you know, these days I'd be a little smarter about it. Whole day of taking in the culture. I'll let you fill in those blanks. So you fast forward, I'm at this coffee shop. I'm playing chess with my my buddy here, my buddy there, who I don't know that well. I just kind of know. I met these guys at my school. So I'm playing chess. Got like a cat in my lap. I'm petting. There's a dude in the corner like playing a harp. You know what I mean? Like it was just like a dreamy sequence.
Scenario, yeah.
Like a dreamy sequence. And all of a sudden this dude kicks our chessboard. I'm like, I look up at him, his eyes roll in the back of his head, and he starts having a seizure. Now keep in mind, this is, 19 years ago? Is that right? Yeah. Like this is 01, something like that. Like, dude, there was no iPhones. There was this iChat. Like I'm getting around on a map. Not to age myself, but like, and the first thing in my head, especially with, the things that were in my system, was what happens to the three American kids if one American kid just dies and this is the wrong bar to die in? So now all of a sudden I go from cloud 9 to it's time to get the hell out of here. How the hell do we get home? And that was an instance where, without giving the rest of that story, I wised up pretty quick and realized there's some it's worth always kind of keeping things within reason, and especially when you're traveling. So after that experience, I don't find myself kind of going too far off the hook. That story ended well, because I don't want to give you the whole I don't want to give you all of it, but we got home, and it was fine. But I never found myself in a terrible amount of danger, and most that's because, if you find yourself it can happen, just bad luck. But usually it's because you're probably doing some shit you shouldn't have been doing. Like, there were some times I'd be in a place where I'm just like, I ain't going out at night in this place. I'm just not doing it. I'm not taking a chance. Like, the risk reward is not there for me. How cool is it going to be versus the risk of the things that I might see? But for the most part, these places are safe, man. Like, I think there's this idea that some of these places are very, very unsafe to go to, and it's just not true. Every city's bad. Every city's got a bad spot you probably shouldn't go to. There's the other side of the tracks in every city. And I think that's one thing that I would hope Americans start recognizing is, hey, man, America ain't the safest place these days. I got friends in other countries who now they're saying, shit, like, I want to come, but I'm kind of scared.
There are places that are not really good in this country right now. They're extremely dangerous.
It's not, and it's a scary thing, because I don't know how it gets any better.
So we are in Kissimmee, Florida today, and we are at a big festival called Country Thunder. Mm-hmm. And Morgan Wallen is headlining tonight. And so you're a big music fan. I know you and I have hung out quite a bit. What kind of stuff do you typically listen to?
I listen to it all. I've always been a big country fan, and I'm not just talking shit. I used to listen to that ever since I was a kid. Yeah, man, I listen to it all. It really depends on my mood, but I actually, music's very integral to taking it back to what we're talking about. I create a playlist for every character.
Really?
And I use music to get in. I use music as part of my kind of imaging process to kind of build the backbone of like what a character
That
is.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I mean, there's nothing more pure than music, man. Nothing.
Well, and I can see where that would, if you built a playlist around what you think this character's persona is, it lets you kind of dial a lot of those things in. That makes a whole lot of sense.
It's also interesting too because it's not just like, oh, I want to make that song part of this character. I'll just be listening to music, and that music will help me find a way in.
Gotcha.
And now this music is part of that character.
Yeah.
And that is a part of the process which is subconscious, and I can't put my finger on what it is, even if I tried. It's completely organic.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I always let Junior, Derek, and Scott kind of ask a few questions. So they're
Fire away, man.
come on, let's see what they got.
Favorite director and why?
Ooh, man. Like what I've worked with.
Just any.
Soderbergh was pretty rad, man. I worked with Soderbergh on Magic Mike, and I had a support role on that, but it was pretty cool to watch him because he is a one-man show. He's working the camera, he's talking to the actors, he's messing with the lights. You know, he's doing jobs of like 5 people. So I remember, and I was a younger actor at the time, but I remember sitting back and watching him work and just being like, this is why he's Soderbergh. Yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind. But I've been fortunate to work with a lot of great directors.
Have you ever watched the Actors Studio stuff on?
Oh yeah. I have eaten so many actor interviews over the years.
Yeah.
I learned quite a bit from them.
So what's your favorite cuss word? That's one of the questions he always asks.
It's a hard one. So what I did, are we allowed to? Are we allowed?
Absolutely.
All right,
Say
good.
anything you want to say.
So you look. Man, I'm Irish. I'm from Chicago, so it's got to be cunt, right? But what I like to do is I like to put a Y at the end because it takes some of the bite off.
Yeah.
So I just call it cunty. Kind of cunty, right? Yeah. Now I wouldn't say it to a female, in ever under any circumstances. But I like to take a little bite off with that.
Good answer.
Man, I meant to get to this a while ago, but I want to go back to one thing. I read Matthew McConaughey's Green Light. Did you?
I read that too. Yeah.
Man, I found it very fascinating. Just the whole way he put that book together was pretty intriguing, and it reminded me a lot of you and your adventurous spirit and some of the things that we've talked about that you've done, like we just went through.
Yeah,
he seems like a pretty interesting cat. Have you met him before?
I have not. We were on the same film, but I didn't get a chance to meet him.
That section in that book where he went over and he was fighting with the guy in the jungle.
That's cool, man.
That's crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, that's cool. Like he's lived a life, and that what's interesting about that is that's like a time-stamped book. I'm very fascinated about that time in Hollywood history and film, and like so it's interesting to hear him talk about what it was like back then, which wasn't that long ago, but it's 20 years before my time.
Oh, it's a completely different era, man. A lot of things have changed in 20 years.
Yeah. I'm actually I've been working on a book myself, but the way I kind of feel about writing generally books for me, it's all like a post-40 thing, man. I just feel like the older you get, you got something more to say. Now, I might write something now in 2 years and be like, all right, that's horse shit. Like, come on, this is what you really mean. So I would like to write something like that with and I love the way he kind of incorporated, his art and his life and his travels, right? Because it's all the same thing, man. It makes a beautiful life.
So as we wrap up here, what's current? What do you have coming out? Where are you at right now, career-wise?
So right now I had 2 films come out this year. I had the Lifetime film I mentioned. I had another film called Driven, which is season 3, which is on a network called Passion Flix. It was basically romance novels, which is a very popular book trilogy we did. So I got another film coming out, Something from Tiffany's, on Amazon Prime, I believe December 9th, December 10th, something like that. It's like a family comedy, Christmas vibes. That's going to be a great film. I got a support role in that, and I got 2 more lead films coming out in the spring. One's a psych thriller called Catalyst, and another one is a dark comedy called Lady, which is that's a very, very interesting one as well. And it's cool, man. Like I've been fortunate to be able to play a range of characters, especially with film. Sometimes when you do film, you get a chance to do that where you don't get that in TV. So, yeah, I'm excited about. I'm not only proud of what we've released this year. I'm really excited about what's coming.
Awesome, man. Thank you for your time, brother.
Hey, man,
Always
happy
good
to
to
be
see
here.
you, man. Michael Roark.